So did you know that there's actually an equation for happiness? For all you math geeks out there, and for all you that were questioning why you needed to take algebra or calculus in high school, now you know. Here it is right here. So this one's a fairly basic one. There's actually lots of equations out there that have been done to really measure happiness. But one of the more basic ones is an idea of taking your perceived reality and subtracting that your expectation or preference, and that will show you what your emotional state is. And what's important about this is to understand how your emotions and how your state of being are affected by these two things, because you can play these in a way to raise your emotional states. Because if you watch my video on the emotional guidance scale, you can understand that as you go up the emotional guidance scale, your ability for your brain to be more fully functioning, your ability to be into your parasympathetic nervous system, your ability to get inspiration from and guidance from spirit, and all that increases, becomes more working together, which gives you more ideas, gives you more opportunities, which then gives you more ways to work around challenges and turn them into celebrations. So let's take a look at this really simple formula and see what we can do with it. So the simple formula is that perceived reality minus expectations or preference is going to be equal to your emotional state. A little bit of nuance that needs to be done to that. But basically the idea of it is, say you got a B plus in a class, but your expectation or your preference was an A, then your emotional state, even though you did really well and performed above average, you're actually going to have a lower emotional state because you had this preference or this expectation of getting an A. So what you want to make sure you don't do is you want to make sure that you don't dream too small, but you also want to kind of play with it and see where you are as far as what you feel like you need. So it also, you can put in the idea of unattachment in it as well, because you can have a very high goal or a very high preference or expectation, but what is added to that is your attachment to it. So if you have a very high expectation or preference, as long as you're not attached to it as much, when it's subtracted from your perceived reality, even if it's in the negative, you're not going to have a lowered emotional state. Now, the other point of is as you go higher in the emotional scale, your perceived reality is going to be different too. And that's the interest. So it's this kind of circular kind of formula or equation where your emotional state is actually going to affect your perceived reality. And it's also going to affect your attachment to your expectations and your preference. And you also want to make sure that the part that also needs to be nuanced is the idea of, say your expectation was something happening to somebody else, perhaps, somebody else like maybe losing an election or something, untoward happening to somebody else. We all are built, whether you like it or not, we are all built for love. So when we hope something not good for somebody else, it actually will lower our emotional state, even if our perceived reality is a plus. So you have to keep that in mind, that you are just built that way. And you can want somebody to, you can always want somebody else to win, and not be focusing on, well, this person needs to lose. So it's where you place your bet at. It's where you place your expectation and your preference into, right? Because when you want less for somebody else, well, it comes right back to you. Whatever you want for someone else, whatever you see for someone else, reflects right back onto you, because this is a fractal universe. And what I mean by that is that if you look at any one little small piece, the tip of my finger, and if you really zoomed in on it, you would see an entire new universe right there. And then if you zoomed on any part of that little universe, you'd see an entire another universe, and on and on and on it would go until you would see everything is interconnected. So some people might call it karma. Who knows what somebody might call it. But the idea is you want to make sure that you are wishing well in some way, whether it's for wishing for someone else or wishing for you. Because even say like in a competition, if you wanted to win a race, well, that means there are people that aren't going to win the race. And that's okay to want to win the race, as long as you're not concentrating on the idea of, I want them to lose the race. No, you want you to win the race. And you want everybody else to be joyful in however they finish. Maybe the next guy was happy getting second. Who knows? That's not your cup of tea. That's not what you have to worry about. But the important thing is for you to focus on what brings love and light. And what can bring love and light is you winning. That's fine, as long as you're not focusing on somebody else being the loser, right? I hope that makes sense, that you are going to affect your emotional state by that. But as you play that loop, as you play with the level of your perceived reality versus your expectations, and then the emotional state that gets out, you can play that loop, and you can just go up higher and higher and higher. And it gets easier as you get up higher because your perceived reality changes. You become much more open to perception. So something you might have seen as a challenge or an obstacle or a dilemma or a problem or as bad before, you might now see the nuance and the opportunity in that challenge. And with your expectations and your preferences, you might also put a little bit less attachment to it, and that you understand that if I don't get this expectation or this preference, it doesn't mean the death of me, or it doesn't mean that I am less or that I am not worthy. So there's less of a subtraction from your perceived reality, and then that will give you a higher emotional state. So think about those things. Think about when you feel bad after something. Was it because of your perceived reality? Was it because of your or how much attachment you had to your preferences or your expectations? What happened there? Because that is a fairly simple formula, although there are really some nuances to it. And once you understand what it was for you that made that to where you had a lower emotional state, you can start playing with it to get to a higher emotional state. And once you start seeing that happen for you, and how you have the ability to manipulate your own emotional state and what is available for you in the mindset of a higher emotional state, you get to understand your true control, your true manifesting control. And then you are at the very beginning of becoming a master of manifestation. And then you can start being of true service to yourself, to those that you love, and the world around you. So this is something that you can use anytime, any day, no matter what your situation is. You are the one who gets to decide what your perceived reality is. You're the one who gets to decide how much attachment you put. You're the one who gets to decide what your preferences are or your expectations are. And you're the one that gets to really experience that emotional state and see what that meant for you. And that's what's important. Stop listening to what everybody else is telling you you're supposed to want. Stop listening to everybody else's goalposts for you, because everybody's is different. There are no standard ones. And once you become nuancing yours, making yours more individual, and understanding your own flow, you can manipulate your own emotional states, your own reality perception, and your own attachments. And then joy is the next thing to come. And then you are right there. You're right there in this God space, right there in the alignment with divine, and getting so much inspiration. And life is just magical at this moment. And every now moment feels like an eternity in itself. That's the wildest thing that I've discovered, is that every moment feels like an eternity, but not in a bad way. Not like my hand is on a hot stove and I can't get it off fast enough, but just every moment is so rich, and there's almost too much to perceive. And I get to decide which part of it I'm going to focus on. And that's pretty amazing. Love, peace, and release. Hey, while I've got you, have you ever wondered more about the angels, who they are, how they can help you in your life, and what you can do, and what your full potentiality is? How do you live in joy? How do you have peace? How do you have health and abundance and good relationships? And just how can you traverse the angelic realm and finally let go of the pain and suffering that you are going through right now in whatever is in your life? You ever wondered? I would love for you to join my free private Facebook group, Divine Angelic Manifestors. You'll see the link at the end of this video, or down below rather, but it's go to facebook.com/groups/Divine Angelic Manifestors. It's free, it's private. I would love to see you there. Love, peace, release.